In this video, I'm going to attempt to lose as many brain cells as I can by reacting to videos that criticize Bleach for whatever reason. We'll also discuss how it was once cool to hate on Bleach, but now that it's back, it's once again the hot product. A few people had argued passionately between 2017 to 2019 that Bleach was dead and that the anime was never going to come back. But now they're all too happy to contradict themselves by hopping onto the Bleach 2022 anime bandwagon. Now, it may appear as though I am gatekeeping, however I am only going to be talking about facts in this video. If people genuinely have hated the series and now they're jumping onto the Bleach bandwagon, I want to expose it. After all, Bleach was something that had caused them so much pain and displeasure. I want to remind them of it since they're clearly experiencing a prolonged episode of amnesia. Now, not everybody falls into this bandwagon category. For the most part, I just want to react to some terrible opinions about Bleach and provide my counter to them. I'll also briefly speak about this culture on YouTube that exists where creators discuss anime and other media that they really know nothing about. Like they're making a video just for the sake of making content on the platform. Honestly, if you don't feel passionate about a series and you don't want to make a video on it, just don't force yourself to do it, because all it serves to do is to spread misinformation and spread your bad takes, which are really easy to dismiss. I'll prove this now by reacting to our first video made by the content creator NewWorldReview. So this video is titled "Where Did Bleach Lose Me?", a discussion video that was posted on the 7th of June 2019, so prior to the new Bleach anime being announced. So this was uploaded just before the tide of conversation had started to turn about Bleach, and I think people started to realize that a lot of these content creators just didn't know what they were talking about. Now, I'd watched this video for the first time when I was making my Bleach Ruined Reputation video, and at that time I disproved a lot of the points in this video, but I haven't seen it since, so it's going to be interesting to revisit this video after having uploaded over 100 videos about Bleach on my channel. I think we should play bingo with some of these videos that I'm going to react to, with some points like they didn't finish the full story, or that Ichigo is a reactionary character, or that the peak of Bleach was the Soul Society arc, they stopped watching after Aizen was defeated. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many of these points are brought up in the various videos that I'm going to be reacting to. So yeah, let's start the video.
Today we're going to have a bit of an age-old discussion about the rise and fall of one of the most notorious modern shonen series, Bleach. There was a time when Bleach was at the pinnacle of the shonen world.
Yeah, between 2007 to 2009, back when Bleach was considered to be within the big three. Well, it is in the big three: Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach.
It's time Bleach was fresh, sleek, and seemingly more mature than its
all the praises here,
with a less cartoonish art style, making it stand out, and it caught the attention of the world. But with all eyes on this prolific series, how did it all go so horrendously wrong?
Well, that's what we're here to figure out. A lot of these videos start off with the same kind of premise. They'll praise Bleach, talk about how unique and amazing the art style was, how it was revolutionary for the time that it was released in, but then they very quickly change their tune and speak about where everything went wrong. Of course, you know my stance. I don't think anything went wrong. And the only couple of criticisms that I have about Bleach are that some of the characters weren't completely fleshed out, and I'm referring to individuals like Ukitake, and I genuinely think that portions of the Thousand Year Blood War arc were rushed and definitely do need to be expanded upon. But at the same time, I understand that Kubo was going through a lot of health complications at the time, and I'm fairly confident that with the anime adaptation we're going to get additional details added to the story. I think it's important to clarify that I can find criticism within Bleach before I start to defend it from all of these really bad takes.
I'd like to state at the outset that I am not here to bash Bleach. It's a very popular thing to do in the anime and manga community, to just call something trash and refuse to explain why beyond a few simple talking points.
Well, yeah, no doubt. I wouldn't be making this video if people weren't just blindly bashing Bleach. So I do appreciate that NewWorldReview has this disclaimer at the start of his video. He's not wrong in that a lot of people started to mindlessly just bash Bleach. Its anime has stopped back in 2012. The manga ceased serialization in August of 2016. There was nothing really going for Bleach during that period of time between 2017 and 2019. So there was a lot of people jumping on this bandwagon of hate. And this is what he is talking about here.
But I'm not going to do that because Bleach isn't trash. At worst, it is a painfully average shonen.
Okay, so Bleach isn't trash. At best, it's a painfully average shonen. I'm going to be interested to see what points that he does bring up.
I'm also going to state right here and now that I have not read or watched Bleach to its completion. I completely gave up on the series.
Yeah, dude, what are you doing? You've made this entire video and yet you've not finished Bleach in its completion. This literally tells me that, you know what, you couldn't be bothered to finish it or read the entire story, yet you still want to share your opinion on it. You know, when I hear stuff like that, it makes me not want to continue watching a video.
Series while the Hueco Mundo arc was being published in Weekly Shonen Jump, and I've tried to get back into the series on many occasions over the past decade or so, but it's just been unable to hold my attention.
Okay, so he stopped while the Hueco Mundo arc was being published in Jump, okay.
However, I don't think that not knowing the full scope of Bleach puts me at a major disadvantage.
So not knowing the full scope of Bleach does put you at a disadvantage, I think. Obviously, if you stopped at the Hueco arc, you've not seen the battle between Ichigo and Aizen, you've not seen the Fullbring arc, or the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Yet, you're still compelled to make a video on the topic, so we're 1 minute and 30 seconds into the video, and I don't even know what to say at this point.
I'd say that I represent a large majority of people who conducted a mass exodus of the series and have never looked back since.
I don't think a lot of people had a mass exodus. I think a lot of people did at least finish the Fullbring arc, and even more of the fandom went on to read the manga after the Fullbring arc. I mean, how much time has elapsed since 2012? Of course, you have anime only who have been waiting for the anime to come out, and I know that there is a portion of the fandom that stopped after the Aizen versus Ichigo battle, believing that the defeat of Aizen was the only thing that the story was leading up to, completely overlooking the fact that we had to have Ichigo's powers and origins explained to us still. And during the fake Karakura Town arc, Aizen had foreshadowed a point to Ichigo that would have been explained during the final arc, when he tells Ichigo that he is a human and he doesn't finish this line until the final arc, where we learn that Ichigo is of course a human and a Quincy. It is at that time where we learn the true reason behind the death of Ichigo's mother, while also understanding the true nature of Ichigo's Zanpakuto and the identity of Hollow Ichigo and Old Man Zangetsu. It baffles me as to how people can stop Bleach after Ichigo loses his powers. If you followed Bleach and you understand the character of Ichigo, then you'll know that Ichigo losing his powers is something incredibly devastating. It is the equivalent of Luffy being told that he cannot become the Pirate King. If Ichigo doesn't have power, then he cannot protect his loved ones. When he loses his powers at the end of the fake Karakura Town arc, he has to go through a journey to regain them, and that indeed is the Fullbring arc. But a lot of people overlook that story arc, hence why it is so underrated. While some fans stopped watching after Aizen was defeated, I don't think that the majority did. I'm fairly confident that a lot of people knew that there was still an ongoing story that needed to be told. At this point, Ichigo still needed to come to terms with the fact that he wasn't responsible for the death of his mother, and I'm sure that a lot of fans stuck around hoping for Ichigo's origins and his past to be explained. So I can't get behind this idea that there was a mass exodus.
To identify the exact point in which the series took a swift nosedive into the cold, harsh ground of mediocrity. And I'm going to put this out there now, that moment was right here. That's right, after the climax,
that's unexpected.
The revelation of Aizen's villainy and subsequent complete dismissal of our protagonist Ichigo with a single finger. In context, this moment is pretty phenomenal.
It is. It's an incredible moment. It's a moment where we realize that despite the growth that Ichigo has undergone during the Soul Society arc, there's a new foe that's going to challenge him and force him to grow stronger. It's the perfect setup to the next story arc, which of course is the Arrancar arc.
But in retrospect, this is both arguably one of the greatest moments in the series, as well as the very thing that destroyed it.
I've never heard this before. So I spoke about some people who believe that Bleach declined after the Soul Society arc. I think NewWorldReview is of this persuasion.
We'll be referring back to it frequently as it ties in with all of Bleach's major issues.
Aizen stopping Ichigo is the source of all of the issues of Bleach, okay?
Characters, world, and narrative.
This is going to be interesting. If you followed my channel, I've created several videos and characters of Bleach, world building of the Soul Society, and we talked about the narrative of Bleach extensively in my Ruined Reputation video, and especially in my Ichigo Kurosaki character analysis video. This is going to prove to me whether if this guy actually knows about storytelling or if he's just spouting nonsense that he's seen in another video.
And sadly, each and every one of which would be thrown under the bus by this series.
Dude.
So let's take a look at characters first, and there are no better eyes to look at this issue through than the man himself, Ichigo Kurosaki. Now, when I was a teenager, Ichigo held a lot of appeal to me because he was portrayed as an angry, apathetic creature, much like...
So he's a relatable character, and it is relatability that helps us to be drawn to a character. We like characters because we can see ourselves in them. So he's established that, for one, yeah, Ichigo is a relatable person.
Myself at the time. But deep down, he held a moral compass that compelled him to act, usually in order to protect someone or something. Now,
okay, there you go. He has a moral compass that compels him to act. In his own words, he has stated that Ichigo is an active character.
However, what Ichigo was very much missing is something that is essential to almost all major shonen protagonists, which is a desire.
Ichigo is critiqued for not having a goal or a desire. But if you follow the story, and if you know about Bleach in general, and especially if you've seen up to the Hueco Mundo arc, then you're going to know that Ichigo's desire is to have strength so that he can protect his friends and family. Is this not a clear enough goal? I mean, this was the entire point of him going to the Soul Society in order to rescue Rukia, as early as chapter 2 of the story when he decides that he doesn't want to uphold the responsibility of the powers that he has obtained. He refuses to help Rukia to locate and find hollows that are terrorizing Karakura Town, but when he comes across a hollow that is about to attack a child, he acts. Rukia questions his motive and his purpose here. You can see here that a Shinigami is fair to all spirits. She ends up questioning Ichigo, who at this time only wants to help the people that he knows, not realizing that the fact that he has obtained power has given him a sense of responsibility. He needs to use these powers in order to help those who are weaker than him. She tells him that if he decides to save this helpless child from this hollow, then he has to decide to save every single spirit. There is no other way. So this transforms his desire to protecting not only his friends and family, as Ichigo then wants to protect as many people as his two hands can carry. Now this is as early as chapter 2 of the story. So if you've reached the Hueco Mundo portion of the story and you don't know what Ichigo's goal is, I'm sorry to say that you've just not been paying attention, or you have some difficulty with your skills of comprehension, because it's written there clearly. Through the encounters with Acid Wire, the Shrieker, the Grand Fisher, Ichigo gradually grows into the role. This is character growth and character development. I'm not sure if this is subtle, because it's not even subtle, it's literally written on the page. I don't know what else to say, to be honest. So he's obviously going to be comparing Ichigo to Luffy and Naruto. Luffy wants to become the Pirate King and Naruto wants to become the Hokage.
For example, Monkey D. Luffy desires to become the Pirate King. Naruto's dream is to become the Hokage. And even in darker series, this ambition is still present, like in Death Note.
It's like a bingo sheet. I mean, these guys are coming out with the same worn out arguments that are so easy to disprove.
Where Light has a very clear goal of ridding the world of evil,
Ichigo has a very clear goal of wanting to gain strength in order to protect his friends and family, which then extends into wanting to protect as many people as his hands can carry. It's pretty simple.
Now tell me, what is Ichigo's goal, dream, or desire? The answer is nothing.
This video has lost all credibility to me, and we're at 3 minutes.
With zero ambition whatsoever, who becomes incidentally involved in a series of ever-escalating conflicts because his friends and or family are at risk. He is a passive protagonist.
There you go. I saw this coming. Now, I can appreciate that not everybody has seen my 90-minute breakdown and analysis on the character of Ichigo, but in that video I spoke about how Ichigo has moments where he is reactive and he has moments where he is active. This is a huge misconception that a lot of people have when it comes to storytelling. They believe that the only reason that we follow characters is for them to complete a goal. When you dig into screenwriting and storytelling, you'll understand that there are so many reasons as to why we follow characters. Not every protagonist needs to have this larger than life goal. There are some characters like Ichigo who have a very simple desire and simple motivation. I've said it time and time again, his desire is to protect his friends and family. He is essentially the anime version of Spider-Man. Now, a lot of people overlook this comparison, but if you compare Bleach to Western comics, then you'll really be able to understand Ichigo's character a bit better. The characters of Ichigo and Peter Parker have a responsibility to utilize their powers in order to protect the weak. We just saw in chapter 2 Rukia explain to Ichigo that his powers as a substitute Shinigami come with a responsibility, and you already know within Spider-Man there's the iconic line, "With great power comes great responsibility." Ichigo, like Peter Parker, is a student living within the real world. He juggles this student life with whatever hobbies he has, extracurricular activities, with his job, with his relationships with his friends and family, all at the same time dealing with this totally separate world. The two of them are heroes in their own regard, and they have to protect all of the people around them from the external conflict that occurs within the story. The same way that people describe Ichigo as being passive can easily be labeled onto the character of Peter Parker. He doesn't react until some sort of a threat occurs within New York and he takes action. Similar to how Ichigo takes out small level hollows around Karakura Town, Peter Parker, who is the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, takes care of petty little crimes here and there as he listens in to the police radio. On occasion, Spider-Man will face off against larger villains like the Lizard, Venom, similar to how Ichigo will don his Shinigami attire to face off against the Arancars, Aizen, and even the Quincy. They are characters who struggle to maintain a personal life while also being heroes within a totally different world, a world that often or not their friends and family don't know about. Ichigo hides the fact that he is a Shinigami from his loved ones because he doesn't want them to be dragged into his battles. The same way that Peter Parker doesn't tell Harry or Mary Jane that he's Spider-Man. He doesn't want his enemies to target them. So the two characters juggle two different lives, and are most often or not misunderstood by the people closest to them because they don't know that they are living this separate life, and you feel sorry for them. Like during the Arankar arc, when Tatsuki doesn't understand why Ichigo is being so secretive after Orihime is taken to Hueco Mundo. He is trying to protect her by not getting her involved, but Tatsuki mistakes Ichigo's silence for apathy and lack of care. He has no choice but to tell her to mind her own business, otherwise the Arankar are going to target her next. So when it comes to a story, the plot that unfolds is referred to as the external conflict. This is is what is happening. In order to give the external conflict meaning, we need to have internal conflict within the story. This explains why the plot matters. Kubo establishes the internal conflict within the very first chapter of Bleach, as we understand that Ichigo has a desire to protect his loved ones, so this gives meaning to the plot that unfolds. Since protecting his loved ones is his established internal conflict, this gives Ichigo the desire or motive in order to gain power to protect them, while also giving him a reason to strengthen and train his abilities, so that he can keep up with the external conflict that continues to arise via the plot. Now, it's easy to say that Ichigo is a reactive or passive character, but you need to understand that he has motive in order to gain power, and this is manifested in several ways throughout the story. Even before his mother had died, Ichigo's father had told him that his name means to protect, and it is for this reason that Ichigo had desired to protect his sisters, so he had joined a dojo as a child. This is a decision that he actively makes himself. Later, he accepts Rukia's powers so that he can protect his family from the hollow fishbone D, and when he loses his powers, he decides to train with Urahara in order to activate his own Shinigami powers. And then after Aizen is defeated and Ichigo is left powerless, he actively decides to join Execution in order to regain his abilities. This proves that Ichigo has motive and agency. He demonstrates this through his constant pursuit to gain power, thus giving meaning to the plot that unfolds. Ichigo wasn't sitting around and letting things happen to him. Agency is defined as a character who has an ability to make decisions that affect the story that's told. These are the consequences if indeed Ichigo was idle and reactive. Firstly, Karakura Town would be littered with hollows. Secondly, Rukia wouldn't have been saved from the Soul Society. Thirdly, the Soul Society wouldn't have a debt of gratitude towards Ichigo for defeating Aizen, and he wouldn't have decided to help the Soul Society in order to fight off against the Quincy during the final arc of the story. And there are more examples of Ichigo demonstrating that he has an active role within the story, like during the Huecomundo arc, where he disobeys orders from the Soul Society and goes to Huecomundo in order to rescue Orihime. With NewWorldReview having seen Bleach up until the Huecomundo arc, I'm struggling to see how he sees Ichigo as a passive character. I mean, this take is reducing all of the nuance of his character down to this derogatory term, reactionary. If you're going to say that Ichigo is reactionary, then you must also refer to beloved characters like Spider-Man and Batman as passive and reactionary. You have to understand that by referring to Ichigo as a reactive or passive character, you're overlooking all of the nuance that is contained within the internal conflict. People know the internal conflict of characters like Spider-Man and Batman. They know that Spider-Man has the power to protect, and it is his responsibility to use his power in order to save those that are weaker than him. He cannot just be selfish and neglect this power and just focus on his life as Peter Parker, the same way that Batman becomes a vigilante after his parents were murdered. Both of these characters have a very similar past to our protagonist Ichigo. There is so much nuance when it comes to writing very good, relatable characters, and when people throw around passive character, reactionary character, it only proves to me that they know very little about screenwriting and storytelling. So now that I've explained why I think Ichigo is not just a passive character, let's see what NewWorldReview goes on to say about Ichigo.
Meaning that Ichigo only ever responds to stimulus, he does not initiate. And as a result, following his journey, or lack thereof, becomes a bit of a futile exercise because we're not along for the ride to see him achieve something great. Or at least...
The thing is, what do you want Ichigo to achieve? Do you want him to become a captain within the Gotei 13? Do you want him to become, a member of the Zero Division? Do you want Ichigo to become the Soul King? This is completely unrealistic. Ichigo is somebody who lives within the real world. The Soul Society is a separate realm. His responsibility is to protect Karakura Town. It is for this reason that Byakuya has shamed to ask Ichigo to help them in their battle against the Quincy during the 1000-Year Blood War arc. So you can understand that we are not following this character for similar reasons to why we're following Luffy or Naruto. Naruto wants to become the Hokage so that he can be recognized by his village. Luffy wants to become the Pirate King so that he can experience being the freest man in the world like Goldie Roger. I mean, this guy's complaining about Ichigo being a passive protagonist, but he didn't get around to one of the main story arcs within Bleach, the Fullbring arc, where Ichigo plays his most active role within the entire story, where he is motivated and driven to get his powers back. This is why I disagree with what he said at the start, that he doesn't need to have seen or read all of Bleach in order to comment on it. You're coming out with these really bad takes, and it's because whatever story you have read, you haven't properly understood, and a lot of what was to come would have answered some of your complaints, to be honest.
We're here to essentially see what he does when people with actual ambition set their plans in motion, and he needs to either rescue them or prevent them from reaching their goals.
So people who have actual plans and want to set them in motion, individuals like Byakuya who take Rukia back to the Soul Society, that's an external conflict. Aizen who wants to take the throne of the Soul King, external conflict. Ichigo Ichigo actively decides to do something in each of these instances. He actively makes the decision to go to the Soul Society to rescue Rukia, believing that it is wrong that she was taken there because of him. Ichigo being gifted the power to protect was the greatest thing that had ever happened to him. He is not going to let Rukia be executed for something that he feels responsible for. He actively decides to go there to save her, and it is through his resolve that he accomplishes this desire. While his larger desire is to protect his loved ones, there are these small desires within each arc. Whether if this is his desire to protect Rukia, which evolves to his desire to overcome his inner hollow during the Iranka arc, then his desire to rescue Orihime during the Huecamundo arc, which evolves to his desire to defeat Aizen, and during the Fullbring arc he has a desire to regain his powers, and the Thousand Year Blood War arc he of course has a desire to defeat the Quincy who are terrorizing the Soul Society.
Frodo is your classic passive protagonist. At the beginning of the story he has no reason to leave his nice cozy hobbit hole, but eventually he makes the transition to an active protagonist by accepting the call to adventure.
I wouldn't say that he transitions to becoming an active protagonist. This is where he doesn't understand that characters or protagonists have moments where they are active and they have moments where they are passive. It doesn't just have to be one or the other.
You're very much starting out your protagonist at a wild disadvantage, because you now need to move the story and the world around them, rather than having them actively seek out the world and the story. Like say the protagonist of One Piece would, Luffy. But with a passive protagonist you need to work that much harder, because they in and of themselves are not inherently interesting.
Now this is ridiculous, stating that Ichigo is not inherently interesting. He's a character who lives within the 21st century, who is dealing with issues that are similar to our own. Ichigo has to maintain friendships, his school grades, his home life, all at the same time he has to also juggle an added responsibility of being a substitute Shinigami. We can relate to Ichigo's struggles as a teenager, but what makes them even more admirable is that he is choosing to live a double life. If Ichigo isn't fascinating, then Peter Parker isn't fascinating. The problem is that people believe that Naruto and One Piece are the only successful formula for a long-running shonen series. Bleach tells a very different kind of story, and it is evident that people don't understand this.
And so a lot of heavy lifting then gets put on auxiliary characters, whereas in Bleach, Ichigo's fellowship, if you will, are more or less the same kind of blank slates of ambition as he is. Orihime has no clear desire for the present or vision for the future.
Orihime gains her own special abilities during the first arc of the story, similar to Chad and Uryu. Orihime has her own desire when she wants to prove herself to be useful to Ichigo, and this is a plot thread that we follow all the way until the final arc, where at the end she is finally able to fight alongside Ichigo, when Ichigo accepts her and recognizes her for her own strengths and her own powers, so she has a desire to want to fight alongside Ichigo.
Rukia is there, another passive actor who got caught up in fate, / some sort of female lead who is eventually pushed to the side when Kubo realized that, like everyone else, she has no driving force.
Rukia does play a fateful role within the story. Through fate, her Zanbakudo had fallen down upon Karakura Town that night. That very night that Ichigo had gained power. But through this interaction, we have a deep story that unfolds for Rukia, where she is taken to the Soul Society and she gradually comes to terms and accepts her execution. She feels guilty for killing her Lieutenant Kain Shiba, a character who shares a striking resemblance to Ichigo. Feeling like she could redeem herself, she protects Ichigo at the end of the Substitute Shinigami arc by no longer resisting and going to the Soul Society in order to save his life. While she is imprisoned, she thinks back on her life, reflecting on whether if she deserves to be rescued or not. We get to appreciate and understand the guilt that she is feeling after the death of Kaien, as well as the troubled relationship that she has with her older brother. Her bond with Byakuya is resolved by the end of the Soul Society arc, when Byakuya finally acknowledges her and treats her like a younger sibling. And this plot thread of Kain Shiba that is established within the Soul Society arc is finally resolved within the Huecamundo arc, proving that she did actually have a larger role within the story. And of course, she once again symbolically returns within the Fullbring arc in order to return his Shinigami powers back to him.
The only one of the original bunch who has any sort of depth whatsoever is Ishida.
Okay, he was paying attention when it came to Uryu, but completely overlooked Orihime, Chad, and Rukia.
And so with a lack of driving force for our initial main cast, Kubo's solution to this problem was quantity over quality.
No, there wasn't. Completely disagree here.
So the series became perpetually flooded with bombardment of empty characters who absolutely looked cool, yes, but once the audience realized that they had very little to offer, then we needed to have shiny new replacements come in.
He's taken one of Kubo's strengths and has tried to portray it as a weakness. Kubo has an excellent ability to draft character designs for groups and implement them into his story. Each of the captains of the Gotei 13 have an incredibly unique character design. There are accessories and features added to their Shinigami Shihakusho that perfectly complement their personalities, and through the first arc alone we get to know so much about each of the various different captains. We learn about the sadistic nature of Mayuri. We learn about Byakuya's arrogant and prideful nature, his desire to follow the rules and law and order of the Soul Society even at the expense of his younger sister. We learn about the cunning nature of Genichimaru. We learn about the bond between Tozen and Komamura, as well as the tight-knit relationship between between Captain Hitsugaya and his Lieutenant Rangiku Matsumoto. And this is just a few examples of excellent character writing that Kubo has for the various groups that he establishes within his story. And when it comes to the Espada, each of them have a well-defined aspect of death that completely relates to their personality. And when it comes to the Vizards, we understand more about them through the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, which serves to give us a reason to care about these characters and why they are involved within the story. So no, these characters don't exist as a byproduct of Ichigo having no reason for us to follow him. It's just another really bad take.
And I'd like to point to Kenpachi as an exception actually. He is such a simple guy. He lives for battle and is always seeking out the next strong opponent.
There you go, one of the characters that I didn't mention, Kenpachi Zaraki. So it proves that when he is paying attention, he can see the nuance within the story.
And once again, this isn't much, but it's better than what Ichigo gives us.
So it's okay for Kenpachi to have a simple premise, but you don't understand the simple premise behind Ichigo.
One point in the story where Ichigo does come into his own, and it is during the Soul Society arc, where we see him grow exponentially as a character, acquiring the strength needed to defeat Byakuya and save Rukia.
This is because he follows through with his resolve. He gains the strength, he realistically progresses, and he challenges Byakuya. It is a battle of two resolves.
He may have been desireless before and after now, but right at this moment, his mission was to declare war against the entirety of the Shinigami to save a single person. And after taking on these absolutely impossible odds, he did it. If the series had ended right here and now, I think Bleach would probably be remembered as one of the finest shonens ever put to page.
Did you just forget about Hollow Ichigo's interruption during his battle against Byakuya? Did you forget about the death of Aizen, or who was co-conspiring behind the scenes, who had killed the Central 46? Hitsugaya's investigation that he was conducting with Rangiku, who was manipulating Momo this entire time? Or the true motives of Gin Ichimaru within the story? I mean, come on, like, this is basics.
And instead, this happened. And look, it's not the middle finger, but
this happened so that you can establish the threat for the next story arc. It's a shocking moment which keeps us gripped and invested to follow Bleach through into its next arc.
This is essentially Aizen flipping off the audience and saying that everything we'd seen up until now was all for nothing.
Well, of course, because it gives Ichigo a reason to grow stronger. What stakes would we have to go into the Arrancar arc if Ichigo was able to fight against Aizen? This is an epic moment because Aizen renders all of Ichigo's work useless. It's an incredible setup and a fascinating premise.
But the characters who had already been rendered meaningless by Ichigo, and the arc in general, were further demoted to a level even more than meaningless by this.
Not really. Chad had undergone his own training when he had met up with Urahara and trained with Renji underground. Uryu had of course regained his powers with his father, and Orihime had taken her own decision by choosing to go to Huecomundo in order to put a stop to Aizen's plans herself. Those characters that he just called useless accompanied Ichigo to Huecomundo. Both Uryu and Chad had told Ichigo to trust in them too. By no means were they sidelined.
Although interestingly enough, Aizen is another one of those rare goal-driven characters in Bleach.
See this, you don't know anything about screenwriting or storytelling, so you're only complimenting characters who are driven by a goal.
Desire to stand atop the heavens in place of the absent gods,
okay,
or whatever it was. It's
you've got that right.
Vague and kind of bad guy for the sake of being bad guy, but
Aizen was sick of the status quo. He wanted to change the world. He knew the truth about the Soul King in the same way that Urahara had known the truth about the Soul King. It is for this reason that he had planned for centuries to create his own Hokyoku, and he had stolen Urahara's Hokyoku and combined the two of them in order to transcend himself to a level where he could challenge the Soul King. Aizen did not want to be ruled by an idol god.
Also, rather fascinatingly, before Aizen leaves, he tells Ichigo that he is interesting for a human.
Interesting for a human. This is because Aizen knows everything about Ichigo since the minute that he was born. We learned this during the Everything But the Rain flashback during the final arc of the series, where once again his experimentations had interrupted the lives of Ichigo's parents. A hollow that he had created called White had bitten Ichigo's mother, and so the hollow had fused with a Quincy. This hollow White had become a part of Masaki. Isshin sacrificed his powers in order to save her, and eventually when she had given birth to her firstborn Ichigo, this inner hollow had combined with his Shinigami powers that he had inherited from his father. His father was essentially the human side, while his mother was the Quincy side. This remark where Aizen tells Ichigo that he is interesting for a human is a foreshadowing that he does, and he adds to this foreshadowing during the Fate Karakura Town arc when he is about to reveal to Ichigo that he is a human but he is interrupted by Isshin, and it is at that moment that Kubo gives Isshin the responsibility to reveal to his son the details about his birth, the true identity of his mother, and he explains this to Ichigo during the Everything But the Rain flashback arc. But all of this subtlety and foreshadowing is overlooked by individuals like NewWorldReview. I mean, it's there, they mention it, but they don't know the meaning behind it, because he thinks that it isn't important to have seen all of the story in order to understand or make a video on it.
This is a lie. Maybe not from a character perspective of Aizen and Ichigo, but from writer to audience, this line is a big lie. And it's because at this point we'd already explored the best that Ichigo had to offer as a character. There was no room to grow from here.
There was no room to grow from here. He needed to overcome the battle with his inner hollow, right? He needed to find a way to merge these hollow powers with his Shinigami powers, which he did during the Fullbring arc. And most importantly, during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, he had to confront the imposter who was posing as his Zanpakuto spirit within his inner world for the entire duration of the story. It is there that we learn that Old Man Zangetsu is not the manifestation of his Shinigami powers, but rather he is an inner manifestation of his Quincy powers. He was an individual who was holding Ichigo back. We hadn't seen all that Ichigo had to offer up until this point. We had seen but a fraction of it.
Look, I can't speak for later arcs, but that's exactly what Hueco ended up being. Ichigo had to follow the exact same story beats as Soul Society, just with a new female lead in distress.
You've just gone to the Hueco arc and completely missed out all of the Arrancar invasion of Karakura Town. The entire setup and the build-up where Ichigo struggles with his inner hollow, where he has to understand what it means to fight with instinct. Whereas during the Soul Society arc he was fighting with resolve, and he was facing off against an enemy that he could reason with. While during the Arrancar arc he was facing off against the Espada, individuals who cannot be reasoned with. They fight purely based on animal instinct. Ichigo needed to fight with more than just resolve, and his inner conflict was the answer to the external conflict that was occurring. By gaining control over his inner hollow, he was able to challenge individuals like Grimmjow. And I've mentioned this several times, there's a big difference between rescuing Orihime and rescuing Rukia. Rescuing Rukia was the entire purpose of the Soul Society arc, whereas rescuing Orihime was one small portion of a larger plot to stop Aizen.
He just has to react, and as a result, his character rather ironically succumbed to being a bit hollow, and no amount of side characters could fix that, meaning that from this moment onwards, Bleach was doomed.
Covered various points during my explanation that Ichigo does have his own personal ambition, and contrary to what NewWorldReview is saying, there is plenty of reason to continue following the plot, and if anything, the characters are not actually one of the weakest points of Bleach.
And the next thing I'd like to touch on is the world. Now, a lot of people would sum up this section by stating that there simply isn't one and move on, but that's not quite fair.
He's going on to talk about world building here, and I bet you he's going to compare the world building of Bleach to the world building of One Piece, which are two totally different stories and are completely unfair comparisons to make.
Leap into Soul Society, a supposedly mysterious spirit world ruled by the most powerful of Shinigami. However, beyond its name, Soul Society is extraordinarily ordinary. It seems to consist of but a single city with a
Yeah, this guy thinks that the afterlife within Bleach falls into this realm of heaven or hell. The afterlife of Bleach is based upon the samsara, the Buddhist interpretation of reincarnation, and Soul Society is just one part of the cycle of reincarnation. Unlike the human world, like Hueco Mundo, Soul Society has its own aspect of suffering. We see suffering within the Soul Society through the different areas of Rukongai. There are of course 320 districts within Rukongai. These districts exist in a circular manner around what is referred to as the Serite, which is where the noble Shinigami reside. And depending on how close the district of Rukongai is to the Serite, will determine the wealth and prosperity of that district. So the further out you are, the more depravity there is. So in this sense, the Soul Society isn't a heavenly realm. And of course, to say that the Soul Society is ordinary is again overlooking the different aspects of the Serite, Rukongai, the different roles of each of the divisions, the different areas within the Serite, the different portals that are used to travel to and from the Soul Society.
That's it. There is no greater world. We have a single central point and then a bunch of wastelandy area, with very few points of aesthetic interest. And I should note that yes, this does go to serve the style of Bleach quite well. Kubo is a very minimalist artist, and while lots of people, including himself actually, may cite laziness for this design choice, it works for the most part, and only the barest of backgrounds.
I mean, look at these examples of backgrounds. How are any of these completely bare? This is evident. This is proof that Kubo is an excellent draftsman when it comes to backgrounds. Especially when he wants to draw them, he can.
When you don't have a world acting as a character of its own, all of the weight falls onto the characters themselves to carry the story forward.
Where's he getting this from? I mean, Bleach has excellent characters. It has a believable world that serves its purpose, like he even said. So why does it need to be more than that? I mean, it doesn't have to be One Piece. Bleach isn't a grand adventure story. This is what this guy's failing to understand here. He complimented Bleach for the very things that he is criticizing it for here. I mean, at the start of the video, he said that it was stylish, it was different, it was unique. So you can't have both of these things. You can't have Bleach being like his contemporaries while also trying to be unique.
Because when this happens, it reinforces that what we know so far is pretty much the extent of what we're going to learn about Soul Society and
I genuinely think this guy has a thing for Aizen's finger.
words. And furthermore, that there is a further plane of existence out there where Aizen and his posse will go to dwell.
So Aizen's finger didn't stop us from learning more about the Soul Society. Through the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, we get to learn about the formation of the Soul Society's Research and Development Institute, which occurs after the Soul Society arc. We learn so much more about the history of the Soul Society through various flashbacks that occur, like how Aizen was collecting the souls of various different residents of Rukongai in order to create his own Hokyoku. We learned this during the Fate Karakura Town arc, where Rangiku had been a victim of Aizen's Hokyoku experimentation. Even during the Everything But the Rain arc, we find out that Isshin was the former captain of the 10th Division, and each of the divisions within the Soul Society appear to have their own jurisdiction that they look after within Japan, as the 10th Division was assigned to take care of any hollow activity within Naruki City, and of course Rukia's division is in charge of looking after any hollow incidents within Karakura Town. I don't buy this, that Aizen's finger stopped us learning more about the Soul Society.
We've already been exposed to 2 very underdeveloped worlds, and now we're about to be plunged into a third.
Thing is, what more do you want developed about the real world? I mean, Karakura Town is based within Japan, which is based within our world. If you're saying that that's not developed, then you don't have an understanding of the own reality you're living within.
Creating worlds is not easy. It's a disgusting amount of work that goes into fleshing out their histories, culture, and general society.
So history I do understand. We get a lot more information about the history of the Soul Society in subsequent story arcs, so what use is it going to be to learn about the culture within a story like Bleach? This isn't One Piece.
Hueco Mundo consists of absolutely nothing. Incredibly vast amounts of absolutely nothing.
When it comes to Hueco Mundo, most of the activity of the residents reside underground, and there are areas within Hueco Mundo, like the Forest of the Menos, or Aizen's Palace Los Noches.
Hueco Mundo gave the characters even more nothing than usual to play against, and thus they were left entirely exposed as the shallowly written figures they are.
Shallowly written figures. He said he wasn't gonna bash Bleach.
But finally we need to explore the story. Now this was never Bleach's strong point.
Okay, so the characters weren't good, the story wasn't good, the world wasn't good. I mean, you claimed to think that Bleach was good at the start.
Because art was always the selling factor behind Bleach, and the story was just kind of a thing that needed to come along with the medium. After starting out as a monster of the week type of manga, Bleach was soon streamlined into a very simplistic story model for the Soul Society arc, which was rescue the girl. Yeah, there were other things at play and some interesting relationships that got explored, but there was just nothing beyond rescuing Rukia here. Whereas in other series,
there was a lot more with the Soul Society arc than just rescuing Rukia. I mean, you have Renji's conflict that he has with not being able to surpass Byakuya Kuchiki, and thus he has no choice but to go ahead with the execution of his childhood friend. I'd mentioned earlier, Rukia struggled with accepting that she was responsible with the death of Kain Shiba, and how she comes to terms and accepts her own execution. And you have Ichigo's resolve that is constantly being tested throughout the entirety of this arc. You have Uryu, who is made to face off against Mayuri, an individual who had done experimentation upon his own grandfather. And I mentioned this earlier, you have Hitsugaya, who is doubtful of Rukia's execution and believes that Genichimaru is plotting something behind the scenes and that he indeed is responsible for the death of Aizen. And as a consequence of all of this, Momo Hinamori is being manipulated by someone or something. The main objective is to rescue Rukia, but you have all of these other side points that are occurring, and all of the side plots end up culminating into a situation where you have a group of the Soul Society that are in favor of Rukia's execution, and you have a group that are opposed to it, believing that it is far too harsh of a punishment for the crime that was committed. I mean, it is for this reason that Shunsui, Ukitake, and characters like Kimpachi work alongside the invaders to prevent the execution of Rukia. Through all of this, we have Yoriichi's battle with Soifon, where we learn that Yoriichi and Urahara were former captains of the Gotei 13. We understand and appreciate how Soifon had admired Yoriichi, and these feelings of admiration turned into bitter resentment after Yoriichi had abandoned all of her titles within the Soul Society for a mysterious reason that isn't unveiled yet. So yeah, the Soul Society arc had a lot more to it than just rescuing Rukia. Clearly he understands the complexity when it is applied in the context of Hunter x Hunter, probably not so much when it's Bleach.
There would always be a greater story at play, using arcs as stepping stones towards that.
I mean, the greater plot that was unfolding was Aizen. It had started when he had Rukia brought back to the Soul Society during the Substitute Shinigami arc. His whole plan was to get Rukia executed so that he could take the Hokyoku out of her. This is a larger plot point. I mean, your whole argument is being disproved here.
In One Piece, everything the Straw Hats do goes towards serving their ultimate dreams. Everything Naruto does goes towards eventually becoming the Hokage.
Everything that the plot is doing is serving those characters' goal. But the thing is, Bleach isn't that type of a story.
Everything Ichigo does is only to solve an immediate problem.
So Ichigo's larger goal, I'll continue to say this, is to protect his friends and family. And within each story arc is an immediate desire that needs to be fulfilled.
Difficult to build an actual story behind Bleach, and leaves it as a more or less improvised weekly soap opera.
So improvised weekly soap opera. So you don't really know the motives behind why Aizen takes action, failing to understand the nuance of the character writing, overlooking the world building aspects that are there. I think I'm done with this video. I think all of the arguments in this 13-minute long video are just so bad. Like, a lot of these arguments are terrible.
If Bleach ever had a direction, it lost it. And introducing a billion new characters is not an effective substitute for story. Seeing this finger pop up was very much a death sentence. It's like saying, there's more. I haven't thought about what more there is yet, but it's coming.
To think that Kubo didn't think about that there was more to come with this plot is just so ignorant. I've already said this, the Hollow interrupts Ichigo's battle between Byakuya, which sets up a plot point for us to follow. Aizen faking his death and killing the Central 46, leaving with Gin and Tozen sets up a plot point for us to follow. Rangiku and Izuru Kira are devastated by Gin's betrayal, just as individuals like Shuhei Hisagi and Komamura are devastated by the betrayal of Tozen, while nearly everybody within the Soul Society was impacted by the actions of Aizen. There's clearly a story and a plot unfolding, and it's directing us towards the next arc. Is NewWorldReview completely overlooking the existence of the Hokyoku, which is the main object of interest within the Arrancar arc? This is the object that allows Aizen to transcend. The problem is that the subtlety that is carefully weaved into the story by Kubo is overlooked by people who critique Bleach. Aspects of the Quincy that are foreshadowed, aspects of Yuha Buck being the end villain are foreshadowed, aspects of Ichigo's true identity is foreshadowed. And this is just a few examples of the story that is unfolding within Bleach. You know, most people claim that Bleach had nowhere left to go after the fake Karakura Town arc. This guy is saying that Bleach has nowhere to go after the Soul Society arc.
Bleach would just struggle to achieve its previous glory with characters who had no drive to be where they are. And once again at this point I should state that I have no idea what happened to Bleach after about halfway through the Huecomundo arc.
That's the problem. You have no idea what happened to Bleach, which leads you to form these absolutely terrible opinions. And you spouted them out and made a video that's had over 133,000 views. This is just a really bad video.
Because right before this moment is where the series should have ended. Everything before Aizen's finger is fine.
I wanna take Aizen's finger and shove it up this guy's ass.
Bleach lived this new portion of its life on character design alone, which is a huge credit to Tite Kubo.
You reduced everything beautiful about Bleach into just, it's got cool pictures, it's pretty.
Hell of an artist to continually come up with such compelling designs, but he was no writer. So as cool as these characters look, most of them amount to nothing in the
So Kubo wasn't a writer, more like you aren't a reader. You didn't read the story. You don't understand the complexity or the nuance because you didn't care for it. At the start of the video, you did say you weren't going to bash the series and you completely bashed it.
It suffered a slow and humiliating death, not only falling from the graces of anime and manga, but being kicked into the dirt.
Kicked into the dirt. We've had the manga come back in August to great reception. We've had the anime announced in March of 2020. We've had an excellent trailer drop, but we've been kicked into the dirt. We're dead.
It's a shame because I used to love Bleach.
Bro, you didn't love Bleach. You had issue with it straight after the Soul Society arc, yet you continued watching it all the way up to the middle of the Huecomundo arc for whatever reason. At what point, did you enjoy Bleach? That's what I really want to understand. Since you didn't really understand anything that was going on during the Soul Society arc, because if you did, then you would know that the story has more room to grow. I guess the only portion of the story you did actually like was the Substitute Shinigami arc, which is considered to be one of the weaker portions of the story, since it was starting off and finding its footing.
Where it eventually ended up does hurt me somewhat.
It hurts me that you didn't read the story.
And for that, I would like to thank Tite Kubo and Shueisha for allowing me that in the first place.
I want to thank you for creating a 13-minute video that was so easy to debunk. I'm going to move on from this and go on to our next video, which is Bleach and the danger of losing your theme. This is another video that I had watched when I was leading up to making the Ruined Reputation documentary that I released. It's another video with some really bad opinions as fact. Let's just get into it.
This is a video about the escalation problem in storytelling, specifically how it applies to shonen manga and anime. You know how in a lot of shonen manga the hero has to fight stronger and stronger and stronger enemies all the time until eventually everyone's basically a demigod?
That's what is known as a shonen battle manga.
Fighting for the fate of the universe, and it's kind of like the fighting is the only thing that even matters to the story anymore.
This is just the structure of any battle manga. They fight progressively stronger opponents.
That's the escalation problem. Gonna be talking about the escalation problem specifically as it relates to Bleach.
I swear, these guys just come up with terms and create a problem out of it and then make these really crap videos.
Generally, it seems like people think Bleach began to decline at various points after the Soul Society arc. I think the rot began to set in earlier than that.
So the first guy thought that Bleach declined at the Soul Society arc. My guy thinks that it declined from episode 1 apparently.
In fact, here.
Okay, so when Renji and Byakuya appear.
With this storytelling decision, it begins to abandon a major theme that was a big part of why it was interesting to begin with. Most stories don't have just one theme, they have many.
Okay, he said it here. Most stories don't have one theme, they have many. That's going to be important for later on.
The first 50 chapters of Bleach are about grief.
We have Ichigo coming to terms with the grief of the death of his mother, Orihime dealing with grief when it comes to the death of her older brother, Uryu dealing with grief in regards to his grandfather's death, and we have Chad dealing with grief when he encounters a boy that is trapped in the body of a parakeet.
As our story opens, we learn that Ichigo can see ghosts. He makes a habit out of helping them. His family is lively, but clearly dysfunctional, and the specter of his absent mother hangs over the living room, literally, and we learn that Ichigo is haunted by survivor's guilt. He was powerless to save his mother and source of his near-suicidal determination to protect everyone around him at any cost.
This guy understands Ichigo's desire.
Ichigo's primary character trait, in other words, comes from his grief at the loss of a loved one.
There you go.
Inoue is an orphan dealing with the death of her brother. Chad, also an orphan, is trying to find himself after the death of his grandfather, and Shida has become embittered by the death of his masters. All of them cope with these losses in much the same way. Ghost busting. Ichigo becomes a Shinigami to protect his family from a hollow attack.
So far so good. He understands the theme of the first story arc very well.
Inoue awakens her special flower fairy things in order to protect her friends from a hollow attack, and Chad awakens his superpowered right arm, protecting a bunch of kids from a hollow attack. Again, you see a theme. They all achieve their powers in a moment of realization that the thing that matters to them is to protect the people they care about. Think about what the hollows actually are.
So far, this video is doing pretty alright.
They are spirits of the dead that are tied to Earth by the grief of their own deaths. The desire to help and heal and protect them will give you the power to overcome grief and exercise it, and that is a pretty powerful theme to build an action story around it, which leads us to the Soul Society arc. Because here the themes of the story begin to crumble. It's other Shinigami fighting with their spirit power. So when two Shinigami fight, that's two people competing to see who's the best at overcoming the death of a loved one?
He's made such a fundamental blunder here. At the start he said that, most stories can deal with having multiple themes. You've completely lost the ball here. You had it all perfect. It was amazing. Substitute Shinigami arc dealing with grief, protecting what you cherish, and then you completely forget that the Soul Society arc has a shift in theme. I mean, did you really expect the entire story to be about grief? This is a long-running shonen story. It's not a movie that has one decisive theme that is told over 90 minutes. This is a story that began in 2001 and ended in 2016. There's gonna be more than one theme. The first arc, protecting what you cherish, Soul Society arc, you have the theme of resolve. It's Ichigo's resolve versus the resolve of the Soul Society. Byakuya wants to follow the law and order of the Soul Society, even at the cost of his sister's life. You shouldn't be so reductionist in your approach that each of these characters needed to have gone through their own grief to activate these powers. Firstly, the residents of the Soul Society are very different to the residents of Karakura Town. The individuals who would gain power through grief are humans, whereas the residents of the Soul Society are spirits who are reincarnated into that realm, and some of them are gifted with spiritual pressure, and they hone this spiritual pressure within the Shinigami Academy. If they prove themselves, they're admitted into the Gotei 13 and can rank up within the various seats within each division, become a lieutenant or a captain. It's not just that they've gone through grief and powers are developed magically, because you've shoehorned this idea that Bleach only has this theme of grief, but now you think that every character who has power must have gone through some form of grief. Can't believe this, man. Some people are saying the Soul Society arc was the peak of Bleach. This guy's saying it all fell apart within the Soul Society arc.
Spirit power becomes just another Dragon Ball power level, a glorified measuring stick for who has got the best superpowers.
It's like only having watched the Frieza arc, and after Frieza kills Krillin, Goku powers up, and that's the only way that Goku gains strength, when we know that he trains and attains that power. Now, while attaining the transformation of Super Saiyan is usually the result of an emotional trigger, subsequent power-ups don't rely on anybody else dying. When Goku attained Super Saiyan 3, it wasn't because somebody died. He just trained and worked really hard and achieved it. The same way that Vegeta had attained Super Saiyan 2 during the 7-year time skip between the Cell arc and the Buu arc. And when it comes to Bleach, it's It's just really ridiculous to try and say that spiritual pressure and grief are linked in such a manner. I mean, do you think Kinpachi has grief? The man wants to tear everything that he sees apart. Even if you went down this route and you wrote your story like this, it's just so reductionist. It wouldn't make sense. I mean, if Kubo went down this path of making sure that every character within Bleach undergoes some feeling of grief to power up, people like this guy would complain and say that there's no originality and they're just recycling through the same idea.
And yes, that can lead you to some awesome fight scenes and epic training montages, but there's no theme to it except some version of might makes right.
The plot is what happens. Like I said, that's the external conflict. Internal conflict is why it matters. You, my friend, do not understand the internal conflict of Bleach. You clearly said that you understood Ichigo's motive and his desire, and now here you are stating that you don't understand why any of the plot matters, because you've so desperately clung on to this idea that Bleach has one theme, which is grief. Now, Bleach has an overarching theme from beginning to end, which is the theme of death. It is present from the start to the end of the series, and from the poem that is mentioned at the start of the first volume of Bleach, it states, "We fear that which we cannot see." And the poem within volume 2 of Bleach answers the first, as it states that people only have hope because they cannot see death standing behind them. Now, these two poems mentioned within the first 2 volumes of Bleach are a discussion of the concept of death and how people fear it. The end villain of the final arc of Bleach had a fear of death, so he had wanted to get rid of the concept of death from reality itself. And so coming to terms with the fear of death is one of the key themes of the story of Bleach, and the only way that we can do so is through hope, as Aizen mentions within the final chapter of Bleach. This is an overarching theme which is present within Bleach. Grief and this theme of protecting others is key within the first arc of Bleach. Within the Soul Society arc, you have the theme of resolve, which I mentioned. It is Ichigo's resolve to save Rukia, which is constantly put under test. And then we have the Arrancar arc, which follows a theme of fear, and this is introduced through Hollow Ichigo, who makes Ichigo hesitant and fearful. After this, we have the Fullbring arc, which deals with the theme of loss, and it's also a throwback to the first arc of Bleach. It is a reboot of the story. He has an inability to protect his friends and his loved ones. And the final arc of Bleach, the 1000-Year Blood War arc, is about the theme of truth. Ichigo having to come face to face with Yhwach as he learns that the enemy of this arc resembles someone who is very familiar to him. So it's not that Bleach just has this one theme of grief. It actually has successive themes which build upon each other. In actual fact, the story of Bleach was building up to the Quincy War from the very beginning. This theme of grief and desire to protect your loved ones is focused upon so heavily within the initial chapters because we have to drill home that Ichigo has this desire. He wants to protect everybody around him because he feels responsible for his mother's death. Now, TB Skyen obviously understands this but fails to actually carry this forward and fails to understand that when a new arc begins, a new theme is established, and that theme leads the story for that particular arc. I mean, how can Ichigo grow as a character if the entire series just focuses on one theme of grief? Why limit your story to just one theme?
It happened to Bleach because of the escalation problem. Ichigo had just demonstrated that he could beat back the kaiju-sized Super Hollow Minos Grande, even in spite of a bunch of exposition explaining that such a thing is surely impossible.
Which is clearly foreshadowing that Ichigo is more than just a typical Shinigami. We can understand that he has some latent power, that he is gifted in some way. This is why the story continues and we have patience enough to follow it through to its conclusion.
Hollows was a key part of the theme.
Did you really expect the characters to continue fighting Hollows for 600 chapters?
Ichigo has just comfortably kicked the ass of the ultimate Uber Hollow, so there's no tension anymore in just having him fight regular Hollows. So what do you do to keep the story interesting? And the answer Bleach comes up with is, well, I guess he needs to fight something else now because Hollows aren't fun anymore.
Ichigo had a definitive reason for fighting against those enemies. While it was different to the reasons of grief that he mentioned earlier, the theme of the story changed. You know, it's not any of our fault if you fail to comprehend that.
We get the Soul Society arc, and now it's a bunch of Shinigami fighting each other, and
you understood the first story arc so well, you drained up all of your brain power and just didn't understand anything after.
Arrancars and V-Sarts and Fullbringers and Quincy's, and none of it has anything to do with the original theme.
I just wanna go back.
Most stories don't have just one theme, they have many.
Most stories don't have one theme, they have many. And they are tricky to pin down, and it's evident because you didn't pin down any of them aside from the theme of the Substitute Shinigami arc.
By the time the Soul Society arc rolls around and the arcs that follow it,
I mean, through the characters getting stronger manga, we get stakes within the story. If the enemy is constantly at the same power level, then why are we going to care? Ichigo could easily wipe the floor with them with one swing of his Zanpakuto. The characters need to get stronger, so that you have a reason for the protagonist to undergo growth. This is just the typical structure of a shonen battle manga.
Who's got the bigger power level? Without a theme or a bigger question to give it some kind of meaning, fun is all it'll ever be.
The bigger question within Bleach is the fear of death.
When Bleach started out so strong, started out so promising, being just another riff on Dragon Ball was never really gonna cut it.
What a terrible thing to say. I can't believe you thought about this and uploaded this onto a video.
Thanks for watching.
That is out of order. I've mentioned this several times now. Even if you want to talk about grief and death, it's present within the Soul Society arc through Rukia coming to terms with her execution. She has to deal with her own feelings of grief behind the death of Kain Shiba. Is anybody reading the manga and actually paying attention to what is happening? I'm gonna move on. Hopefully I've broken down this video enough. 71,000 views in this terrible take. So we're going to go on to a content creator who perfectly falls into this category of jumping onto the bandwagon whenever it's appropriate. When Bleach is the cool thing, let's talk about it. When Bleach is irrelevant and dead, let's just hate on it and antagonize all of its fans. So the content creator that I am referring to is of course ForneverWorld. Let's play some clips that'll sum up ForneverWorld's opinion on Bleach in general.
Again, I'm not the most 100% gung-ho big Bleach fan out there. That's something else that upsets me, that we'll never get the anime again, which is Bleach anime was better than the manga.
The Bleach manga kills the anime. Firstly, how can you say that the anime was better when it's 46% filler and it has so much censorship? When it comes to ForneverWorld, that was 2016. During this period of time between 2017 to 2019, this guy hated and antagonized Bleach and its fans for over 3 years. I mean, here's the proof. You're misunderstanding. I don't give an F about how you feel about the series. Talk about it all you want. Doesn't change the fact that on a mainstream level, it's dead. Yu Yu Hakusho is not dead. It's a classic that's over because the author was smart enough to not dread over one series and moved on. You Bleach fans need to do the same. Stop being a little salty fanboy and getting upset because the reality is Bleach is dead. Also, with Kubo doing a one-shot, unless it's a Bleach sequel, that means Kubo has officially moved on from the series and is trying to craft new stories. Time to move on, Bleach fans. You know, not only did the anime return, the hilarious thing is that Kubo came back in August of 2021 and had dropped a new manga chapter. Bleach fans who can't let go and are in denial. For the record, people are telling me Bleach is coming back. It's not. The creators working on a one-shot, which is what most manga creators do, and starting a new series or testing the waters to see if their new idea for a series is popular. No Bleach sequel, it's not returning. You know what? Some of those anime fans who have read Bakuman and think that they know everything there is to know about manga. There you go. It's just the same. Bleach is dead. So yes, I would love the anime to come back, but it's not. It's dead now. This is what I mean. 2017 to 2019, this guy was talking down to anybody who was a fan of Bleach, who had hopes that the anime would return, or even if the manga was returning with Kubo working on it. Anime strike is more dead than Bleach. So this guy now is creating content on the series after over 3 years of roasting it. Imagine hating on something for this long, and then as soon as Bleach has a big announcement, he magically returns and pretending like, you know, he's been there since day one. I mean, even then, in this video, he talks about how Bleach is dead. I mean, check this out.
But to be honest with you, like, it caught me off guard. You know, I've said it in the past a million times, multiple times as well, that, you know, I had lost all faith in Bleach.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
Honestly, I was like, yo, Bleach is dead. It's a wrap. You know, years like maybe, no, it's not happening.
I'm not even trying to gatekeep here. I'm just stating facts. I mean, if you've hated something for this long, for 3 long years, generally, like, have you got amnesia? Like, did you forget that you were doing all of that? And now you're back pretending like nothing happened. You did more than just say that Bleach was dead. I mean, literally, look at this guy. I mean, Bleach anime return confirmed, 1000 Year Blood War, March 2020 when it was announced. And now, Bleach anime official return date confirmed.
It's March of 2012 that the Bleach anime came to a close, and now we finally
remember, Bleach anime will never, Bleach will never get the anime.
have a solid, concrete release date for the return of Bleach.
This guy's fake. I mean, I used to watch ForneverWorld back in the day, 2010, but too much has happened that I don't trust this guy or his opinion anymore. I mean, good luck to him, and I hope that jumping on the bandwagon makes him feel stupid for saying that Bleach is dead or that the anime is never going to come back. Moving on, we're going to be talking about AnimeNewsNetwork and now jumping on the bandwagon now that the anime is back, and this tweet, when they posted a picture of Ichigo and it said, excited to see him again, and they received all of this hate. Stay away from Bleach reviews, you guys suck. Putting out a tweet like this after countless of articles bashing Bleach for no reason. One of the main articles that AnimeNewsNetwork NewWorldReview I'd released was this one by an individual called Nick Freeman, Whatever Happened to Bleach. When it comes to this article, it's pretty much a mess of self-gratification of this individual who had personally lost interest within Bleach, and Nick is so upset that he has put together this article that sells personal opinions as facts. Before allowing people to create articles on your platform, first make sure that they know the difference between an opinion and a fact. It's so poorly written, the arguments make no sense, and it's clearly by somebody who has no understanding of the Bleach story. And it's again another individual who's comparing Bleach to One Piece and Naruto, stating that Naruto and One Piece had wild success and were able to maintain their fandom even to this day, but when it comes to Bleach, somehow magically the manga volume sales had dwindled. The anime was cancelled years ago. The anime had literally caught up to the manga, so a decision was made to suspend the production in hopes that it would return one day. It's returning in October of this year. How was it cancelled if it's returning? And many former fans are flat out giving up on it. How did things come to this? So this article was written in November of 2015. In this argument, he's again one of those people who believes that Bleach should have ended after Aizen was defeated. As soon as he says this entire argument falls apart to me. There's no credibility left within this actual article anymore. After the defeat of Aizen, Ichigo loses his powers, his main reason for taking action. He desires to have power in order to protect his loved ones. Now, what do you do with a character who no longer has power and is suffering and doesn't admit it to himself? This is a plot point that has to be corrected. Ichigo has to have his powers returned to him. Otherwise, he is no better than that suffering character that he was at the start of the series, where he was desperate for power, and until Rukia had fatefully entered into his world and had given him power. Kubo did enough foreshadowing and had planned enough events within the story for us to realize that there was still more left to tell after the defeat of Aizen. There was Ichigo's backstory, which we knew nothing about. There were all of the unseen bankais with the explanation as to who Hollow Ichigo is and who Old Man Zangetsu is. We understand the real reason behind the death of Ichigo's mother. We learn about how Ichigo is related to the final villain of the series. And not only this, people who complained that Orihime and Chant's powers are not explained entirely, while their powers are explained within the Fullbring arc. This article implies that Bleach was terrible and Kubo had no idea what he was doing. A lot of what is said within this article just makes no sense. It lacks merit because you haven't properly read the story for you to comment on it like this. And yeah, you can spout out your opinion as much as you want, but don't try and portray it as fact. The issue with this thread is that Nick appears to be bashing Bleach for attributes that all shonen series have. These are just tropes of shonen battle manga. It is typical for shonen series to have loads of characters. There are stories that are told over several years. Bleach was told over 15 years. It's crazy if you really expect the story to just fixate around a small cast of characters, because then you'd complain that it doesn't have a variety of characters. After saying that Bleach has nowhere to go after the defeat of Aizen, complaining about the pacing of Waken Window, he goes on to complain about the Fullbring arc, which isn't unexpected. So he doesn't buy into Ginjo's plan because it doesn't make sense. Ginjo actually had to gain the trust of Ichigo, because if he didn't do this, he wouldn't have been able to steal Ichigo's powers in the end, which was Ginjo's final objective. He wanted to steal Ichigo's Fullbring powers. He also goes on to say that the build-up that we had for however many years led to the 3 highest-ranking members of Aizen's army being defeated in remarkably anticlimactic ways. When you're trying to say that the death of Gin was anticlimactic, I have to totally disagree with you on this one. Gin's death was one of the most impactful of the entire series. We got to understand the subtlety of the relationship between Gin and Rangiku, the sacrifice that Gin had made over hundreds of years. His was a tragic past, which had led to an anything but anticlimactic death. You feel sorry for his character, but he is confident enough that the fight will continue on when he sees the conviction within the eyes of Ichigo. This is literally a brain-dead article. This is somebody who is pretty butthurt, doesn't understand Bleach as a story. I mean, they've read over 300 plus chapters and their interest started to wane. Also coming out with this ridiculous argument that the manga volume sales of Bleach had declined when clearly they didn't. Bleach has over 120 million manga sales worldwide, and that's a figure that hasn't been updated since 2018. I'm guessing that we can easily add 10 to 20 more million copies into that figure, thus resulting in Bleach being one of the top 10 best-selling manga of all time. It is ridiculous for you to assume that Bleach's sales dwindled with numbers like this. And like I said, we're not even mentioning digital sales. I can't believe that AnimeNewsNetwork is allowing people to come out with such terrible articles. Individuals who have done little to no research, who try to state opinion as fact. It's no wonder that they had so much backlash when they had come out with a tweet like this, excited to see him again. Frauds. Get out of here. I have no sympathy for AnimeNewsNetwork, especially after everything that they did. Let's just see how it ends. Bleach's former strengths are extinct in its current form, a cluttered mess. In the end, it's probably better to remember Bleach fondly for its past, rather than constantly struggle with its current reality. If you're one of the many people who dropped Bleach, rest assured that you made the right decision. I cannot even believe that this is still up on their page. If you made it up until this point in the video, then you'll already know all of the counter arguments arguments that I have to this article, it's not even worth my time. It's so brain dead. I'm going to move on from this. We're going to talk about a video by an individual called Young Defiant who believes that Bleach sucks, and unfortunately this is an 11-minute video. I wonder what kind of terrible opinions are going to be spouted here.
Bleach is a series that has become so irrelevant it's almost comical.
You made this video in March of 2020, literally the month that Bleach became relevant again. I think this guy literally made a video for attention. It's quite funny now how it's cool to make videos about Bleach, appreciating it for what it actually is, as opposed to calling it crap or sucky because you don't understand the story. Young Defiant is another example of somebody who doesn't understand Bleach and doesn't really appreciate it for all of its epic moments, as he claims that Bleach has no epic moments, as you're about to hear.
Once popular series now faded into oblivion like it never even existed. I've always known Bleach was complete garbage. There were never any high points to this series.
Ichigo meeting Old Man Zangetsu for the first time, Ichigo saving Rukia, Hollow Ichigo taking over Ichigo for the first time, Head Captain Yamamoto's Bankai, Ichigo going full Vasta Lore form, Ichigo when he finds out the truth about his mother, Ichigo's father being a Shinigami, the identity of Kenpachi Zanpakuto being revealed. Old Man Zangetsu is a representation of Ichigo's Quincy powers, or Aizen's betrayal. There were never any high moments within Bleach.
I know a lot of these losers like to suck off the Soul Society arc like it's one of the best arcs. Oh, it's so amazing.
No, it's people like you who suck off the Soul Society arc, because generally Bleach fans enjoy the entirety of the story and appreciate it for what it is. I mean, there's none of these stupid takes like, oh, Bleach should have stopped at the Soul Society arc, oh, it should have stopped after Aizen was defeated. People think that Bleach should have ended after Aizen was defeated, and some even didn't go on to watch the Fullbring arc. And now they're wanting to jump into the 1000-Year Blood War arc without knowing the context behind how Ichigo regains his powers. They're confused as to how he's got his powers back in the new anime trailer.
Nothing but a boring rescue arc with nothing special about it.
We spoke about the various different plot threads that were occurring during the Soul Society arc. Another individual who doesn't know how to read.
That arc sucked, and so did every other arc.
I mean, he's entitled to his own opinion, as bad as it is.
Supposedly, the anime has apparently been confirmed to be back to finish the rest of that trash manga.
If I'm not mistaken, I think this guy trashes on everything. He doesn't like anything at all. He just makes these really bad rant videos.
Talk about just how garbage Bleach is and why this anime doesn't need to return. The Bleach manga was so bad, it's not even worth animating.
I can't take this guy seriously.
The ending was complete trash. Everything that happened after the anime ended in the manga was trash.
The first half of the 1000-Year Blood War arc is some of the most greatest manga content that I have ever read in anything. And I've read quite a lot of stuff. While I can agree with the sentiment that the ending was rushed, I don't think that it's trash. I don't think that it sucks. I think that it can be expanded upon and redeemed with the right adaptation. And I'm pretty confident that the 2022 Bleach anime will do justice to Bleach.
So it's like, why is it getting animated over shows that deserve to get animated? And
so what series deserves to get animated in place of Bleach?
This garbage gets animated? No.
Of course, he wasn't going to give us an example. This guy's just spouting out statements without any examples or proof.
Holding on hope. The anime's coming back, man.
Well, yeah, they were holding on hope because it came back.
And yeah, come on, man. I'm never giving up hope, man. But those people are not well.
Why would the anime return if there was only a select handful of Bleach fans? It makes no sense. I'm like 1 minute 43 seconds into this video and I can already see it's a waste of time. Let's just skip through it and see.
People have abandoned this diarrhea series. You know, he's gonna change. I know I should leave the Bleach anime.
This is what happens when you give a 12-year-old a microphone. Pretty surprised that he was actually able to drag this video out to 11 minutes with just repeating the same stick. Bleach is trash. I mean, how many different ways can you say Bleach is trash or Bleach is garbage without providing anything to back up your opinion?
Yu Yu Hakusho ripoff, Dragon Ball Z ripoff, with each arc literally just being strong enemies showing up.
So no series can take inspiration from anything else. What about the other series that have characters facing off against progressively stronger opponents? That's just an inherent trait of battle shonen manga, which I talked about earlier. Despite the other videos being nonsensical, at least they, were able to formulate an opinion or an argument.
Bleach, it's flat out boring.
Bleach is garbage. Bleach is boring. Bleach is trash. Bleach sucks.
All it is with Ichigo, like he just cries over and over again when he gets beat.
Not really, he does something every time he gets beat.
It's stupid. He's such a bad character.
Fair enough.
And the power system in this anime, complete trash as well. Oh, spiritual pressure, my spiritual pressure.
You could say that, chakra is trash. You could say that power levels within Dragon Ball is trash.
Look at my weapon, my Zanpakuto is so much stronger than yours.
I'm done with this guy. To see how the video ends.
The Bleach anime is coming back to animate some trash manga material that's not even good in the first place. Can't believe this.
The video is just 11 minutes of nothing. Even if you go and check out his channel, I mean, is he talking trash about other series? Garbage, 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 garbage. Top 5 worst manga creators, and he's got Kishimoto and Kubo on there. Enough said. This guy is hating on stuff for the sake of hating on it. So next up, I want to react to some remarks that were made by the guys over on the TrashTaste podcast. Now, this is what I was talking about when individuals talk about Bleach when they don't really know anything about the series, when they hate on it for the sake of hating on it, and now that it's back, it's the cool thing, let's jump on the bandwagon kind of situation. Let's start with this video first, which kind of sums up the point that I'm trying to make.
Bleach.
Right?
Yeah,
You don't want
yeah.
that
I
if
did
you're
that for a
fake
while
anime
with
fan.
Bleach because I dropped it at the Aizen.
Like everybody else that we've reacted to in this video, they dropped it at some point.
So anything after that, I had no fucking idea. But people around me kept reading it, and they were like, "Yeah, you know the whole like Weko Mundo stuff." I was like, "Yeah, that thing."
Bro, what? Wakamundo is the Aizen arc.
Yeah,
To be
Grimjo,
fair, Bleach is one of those you could feasibly lie your way out of it.
This is the problem. Such little understanding of the story, and then you can go out and create content on it and believe that you know everything there is to know, and that's how these misconceptions and, you know, really bad opinions are spread.
Make it seem like you've seen it without having seen it. After you've watched like the first few arcs, then you kind of just can bullshit your way through.
That's exactly what everybody has done in this video. They've seen the first few arcs and they've literally bullshitted their way through an entire like 15-minute, 13-minute video.
You also want to see more Bankai.
So now we've established their opinion of Bleach. Let's see how they react to the news that the anime is returning after the release of its trailer.
Bonnie with the $5 says, "Are you boys hyped for the Bleach coming back next year?" Fuck yeah, I am.
Yeah.
So me and Garn were talking about it. I was so hyped.
I'm way too hyped for something I've shit on so much.
He's hyped for something that he's hated on for so long. That's just the bandwagon mentality that I'm talking about.
I didn't even give a fuck about the 1,000-year Blood War arc.
Then how are you hyped for it if you didn't care about it? This is exactly what I mean. I enjoy the TrashTaste podcast, I listen to these guys, but it's again this culture of content creators discussing anime and media that they really know nothing about or feel passionate about. I wouldn't be surprised if they made Bleach discussions and episode reviews after the anime returns because it's the hot thing to do. In his own words, Giga gets shitted on it for so long, and Joey the anime man didn't care about the 1,000-year Blood War arc, so how can either of them be excited or hyped up for it? So let's now go on to the final video that I'm reacting to, which is a reaction to the Bleach 2022 trailer. Apparently this guy thinks that it sucks. I never thought that I'd be doing a reaction to a reaction, but this trailer reaction got 73,000 views. Thankfully this video isn't that long because I don't think I've got the will to sit through another 10-minute video. Let's see what this is about.
It's finally back. Wait, what? Is that CGI?
That's not CGI, dude. That's drawn.
You people were really hyping this up, but I have already said this before.
This is another guy who's trying to jump on this bandwagon Bleach is bad just to get some views and clicks.
Bleach is just a Yu Yu Hakusho ripoff.
The same way that Naruto is a Hunter x Hunter ripoff, or JoJo's is a Fist of the North Star ripoff. I mean, I think there's a difference between inspiration and plagiarism.
And here's why. They both start with the main character losing their soul. They get help from a female member of a spiritual society. They both inherited a demonic form, which really, in both cases, were assholes. There's 3 different worlds.
Bleach has got more than 3 realms. Here he's mentioned Karakura Town, Soul Society, Wakamundo. You also have got the Animal Realm where Komamura and his grandfather are from, Soul King's Palace, and then you've got Hell. Again, another person who just doesn't pay attention to the story and doesn't know what they're talking about.
But that's just a few of the comparisons.
Well, you sucked at a few of the comparisons. We're 43 seconds in, you've got 20 seconds left to redeem yourself.
You see, Kubo can't write, so he just took Yu Yu Hakusho and added swords. And it worked for the Soul Society arc, but then he just redid the same arc, but with worse pacing and worse everything. So why would you be hyped for this?
Why wouldn't you be? Why would they release it if there was nobody there to be hyped for it? I mean, there's enough hype for Bleach to come back. You are not in the majority. Most people are excited for the return of Bleach.
I mean, this new art style looks like shit.
You are on your own on this one. People are loving this art style. I, for one, definitely like it. The director of Akudama Drive is working on this. The character designer who worked on the original anime has returned. We're getting music from the original composer. Kubo is heavily involved, and you're coming out with, it looks like shit.
Because I'm out.
Thank God you're out, because I'm out. Thank God that was over. A lack of dislike button really helped you. That comment has got 3.5k likes. Likes on this video are like 429. It's got 73k views. I mean, this must be heavily disliked. This is is a pretty good comment. Somebody says, Bleach copying Yu Yu Hakusho is like saying Harry Potter is copying Star Wars because Harry and Luke Skywalker both lived with their uncles. They both had a hidden destiny. They both battled the dark side. Their best friend is a girl. They both have marks on their body. So yeah, totally baseless arguments. Things that just don't make sense. To wrap this video up, so the main problem that I have with these videos and articles is that the creators clearly struggle with reading and comprehension. A lot of their critiques are so baseless and hilarious, it proves that they didn't pay attention to the plot, characters, or the theme of the story. They argue about weak characters when Bleach has one of the best cast or fleshed out and well-designed characters within all of shonen anime or manga. Now, some points were made about Ichigo as a protagonist, which were very easy to dismiss. Now, imagine with conviction saying that Ichigo has no goal or desire when he repeatedly states that his desire is to have the strength to protect his loved ones. I mean, I'm getting tired of saying this because I've said it so many times in this video. Now, it's not a grand or big goal, but neither is Spider-Man's goal, which is exactly the same as Ichigo's. Spider-Man juggles a life between a student and a superhero, just as Ichigo is a student and a substitute Shinigami. We had people claim that Bleach didn't have any cool or memorable moments. Bleach sucks because it has filler. Some of these points that we covered were personal opinions, and there is no doubt that most of them are opinions disguised as facts. Now, what I suggest for all of these people is to just read the manga so that you can understand the vision of Kubo. People are saying that Kubo wasn't a good author based upon the pacing of the anime, and you have to realize how dumbfounded this argument is. Now, in 2022, a lot of the hate that was directed towards Bleach has dried up, thankfully, and it just showcases the superficial bandwagon riding mentality of today, hopping onto the latest trends regardless of your prior feelings because it's the new cool thing to do. I'm not saying that people can't change their minds, but for God's sake, for once in your life, have some conviction and own your crap opinion. Don't go back on it when you realize it's not the cool thing to hate on Bleach anymore. The hate directed towards Bleach now appears to have shifted towards Naruto because it isn't the hot product at the moment, and so the cycle goes on. That is until Naruto is cool again when it gets an anime reboot, and when One Piece ends, they'll find a reason to hate it. When Oda ends One Piece, there is no way that every fan who has years of built-up excitement and anticipation for the finale of One Piece would be pleased with how it ends. So until the hate shifts towards One Piece, this is just the way of the internet. Superficial discussions and lazy commentary from people who aren't even passionate about or know much about what they are talking about. Also, in hindsight, when most people go back and reread stories like Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, they realize that they have an excellent journey, even if the endings of these stories wasn't to their liking. In my opinion, you shouldn't dismiss an entire body of work because you didn't like its ending. Anyway, what do you think about everything that I've spoken about? What's your thoughts on the hate that was spread about Bleach? Do you agree with my thoughts on lazy content creators and how the cycle of hate is spread from one series to another due to mob mentality? I'd love to read your comments and for the discussion to be continued down below. Once again, thank you for making it to the end of the video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, then please consider supporting my channel on Patreon. I have multiple tiers with rewards including access to an exclusive Discord server, video scripts, as well as being the first to know about unreleased upcoming videos. Thank you for your time, and whatever you choose to contribute I will appreciate, and it will mean a lot to me.